I started this YouTube channel in January of 2018. I've talked about all kinds of different aspects of European politics, but I have always avoided talking about Donbass in eastern Ukraine. And there's a reason for that. It's because even though I have followed this conflict since 2014, I knew that talking about it on YouTube would elicit negative responses from some people no matter what I said. I think the time has come to make a video about this. There's some stuff I really want to say. So first of all, I want to talk about what the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden is doing. So the administration for the past 2 weeks now has been wildly hyping a major Russian invasion. It was supposed to come February 16th. That has come and gone. Joe Biden told us the other day that it's going to come any day now. And they're not just saying that Russia is going to make an incursion. They're saying Russia is going to go straight for the capital, occupy the whole country. But Biden has already conceded a lot. So Biden says that there will be no response from the United States military, and it doesn't matter if it's a small incursion or an occupation of all of Ukraine. The largest country in continental Europe, bigger than France, bigger than Germany, 44 million people. And there will be no preemptive sanctions. So the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, that's what he would like to see. So he says, what's the point of sanctioning Russia after we're already occupied? Why not start dribbling out sanctions now to try to get them to back off to show them you're serious? Well, Biden has already conceded that that's not going to happen. What Biden says is that he's got all of Europe on board for major crippling sanctions against Russia. Essentially, Russia would be largely removed from the international marketplace. At least this is the narrative being pushed by the American media. And I believe that the Biden administration is intentionally exaggerating the situation in order to try to make Biden himself look like a strong leader who saved the day, blah, blah, blah. But the idea of these crippling sanctions is basically nonsense. So even if America and Britain place major sanctions against Russia, Germany and a bunch of other European countries at best are only going to do minor sanctions, if any at all. Germany, in pursuit of fighting global warming, is in the final stages of shutting down their last nuclear power plants. They're putting all kinds of restrictions on coal. They said, hey, here's an idea. Let's make taxpayer-supported windmills all over the country. Windmills are like the least efficient way to make electricity of anything there is. It's a total joke. And so Germany is more and more dependent on Russian natural gas to keep their lights on every day. And they're on the precipice of the opening of Nord Stream 2, where the amount of natural gas going from Russia to Germany under the Baltic Sea will double. And there's a lot of background with that involves Ukraine, because currently a lot of Russia's natural gas into Europe goes through Ukraine, and they pay Ukraine transit fees. Ukraine makes money off of it. And if there's an invasion of Ukraine and a war, those pipelines are going to come to a standstill. So the backdrop is not only will they be supplying more natural gas than ever to Germany, but they'll be bypassing Ukraine. So there's geopolitical issues here directly related to the conflict in Ukraine. Germany refuses to even commit to canceling or postponing the opening of Nord Stream 2. So they're not going to place crippling sanctions on Russia. They're too dependent on Russia. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has pursued a domestic oil policy where America is now importing Russian crude oil at a 10-year high and surging fast. So the Biden administration, the media, the fact checkers on Facebook have been pushing a narrative that A, American gas prices are not high, and B, the President of the United States does not influence gas prices even if they were high. Facebook is fact-checking posts like crazy saying this. They're trying to create an alternate reality. Well, Biden blew that out of the water himself a couple of days ago. He was giving a speech and he went completely off script and he blurts out, "I will fight like hell to get oil prices down." So in one sentence, Biden conceded that oil prices are high and that the President of the United States has influence over oil prices, completely shattering this false narrative. So, most people don't know this. Even citizens of America don't realize that an extremely large percentage of all land in America is owned by the federal government. In the western half of the United States, there are multiple states where half or more of the entire state is owned by the federal government. And oil companies have to get permits to drill oil on this land. Biden, since gaining office, has stopped issuing new permits, and now he's not renewing permits as they expire. He's also refusing to issue permits to lay new pipeline. And so this is why domestic oil production is stalling and the importation of crude oil from Russia just hit a 10-year high and it's rising fast. It may hit an all-time high. So the very man who is supposed to have everyone united in colossal sanctions to cripple Russia by removing Russia from the global economy, himself has pursued domestic policies that has driven the United States itself further into Russia's arms. Now, making a long story short, the conflict in Donbass broke out in 2014. A large area of Donetsk Oblast and Luhansk Oblast tried to break away. A war started within the Ukraine. Thousands of people died. Currently, a large portion of those two oblasts are now the so-called People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, there's been fighting nonstop all this time. So what you see in the American media, they're saying, oh, well, all of a sudden there's shelling and people are dying, and well, that's been going on the whole time. What's going on now is a tiny fraction of what took place in 2014. So there's a lot of false narratives going on in the U.S. media. Now, the People's Republics appear to be escalating the situation. Russia could be telling them to, or they could be doing it on their own. But there's been an increase in shelling coming from the People's Republics. Now, they allege that the Ukrainian military is massing and about to invade them and is shelling them. Ukraine denies this. Ukraine says that they are being shelled but not responding. The People's Republics have also called for evacuations of all people except for males aged 18 to 55. So women, children, elderly should all leave. Russia is participating in this. They declared an emergency in the oblast that borders the Donbass region, and they're setting up refugee camps. The Ukraine says this is all a false reality. They're not shelling anything. The alleged refugees are just all made up false BS. Now, in 2014, you had the Minsk agreement, which failed. And then in 2015, you had Minsk II. Now, most of Minsk II has not been implemented. However, it was successful in getting a lot of the large weaponry away from the front lines in Donbass. And so since 2015 with the Minsk Accord, it's mostly small arms and mortars and some small artillery. But it goes on every day, every week for years and years now. So this is nothing new that there's shelling on the front lines. Now, Russia says that Ukraine is not fulfilling their obligations under Minsk II and that they might have to invade to force Ukrainian compliance, that they might have to go in and rescue, Russian-speaking ethnic Russians who Ukraine is giving a bad deal, allegedly. On the other hand, Ukraine wants Russia to rein in the separatists. And Russia says, oh, well, we can't control what they do. They're independent. They got their own mind. They're going to do what they're going to do. And we have no obligations under Minsk II. We're not responsible for what they do. So Russia is playing both sides on this whole Minsk agreement. And I think that's a pretty fair criticism of Russia. Because Russia probably could step in and bring these guys under control. So what Ukraine wants is saying, well, under the Minsk agreement, they're supposed to give up all their heavy weapons. And we think there's still Russian troops in there, which are also supposed to leave under Minsk II. Why don't these guys leave and take the heavy weapons back to Russia with them? Now, the other issue besides Donbass is Ukrainian membership in NATO. And honestly, you may have seen Tucker Carlson talk about this. NATO could largely stop this by simply, with one sentence, with a statement saying Ukraine is not going to become a member of NATO for the foreseeable future. So currently, Ukraine is not eligible to join NATO because there's an active conflict within its borders. And this obviously is an incentive for Russia not to rein in the separatists. Because as long as the conflict goes on, it makes Ukraine ineligible for membership in NATO. Now, there's two things that Ukraine and Russia seem to agree on. Both of them keep telling America and the Biden administration to tone down the rhetoric. They're both accusing the Biden administration of fear-mongering and making the situation out to be much worse than it really is. The other thing that they both seem to agree on is they're both calling on NATO to give straight answers to straight questions. So a lot of Ukrainian leaders have essentially conceded that they can't join NATO right now, but they're saying, give us a timeline. Give us the steps we have to take. And Russia also wants to, know if they're going to take Ukraine as a NATO member. And so both countries are accusing NATO of just refusing to say anything. And that's a major issue that is making this drag on. NATO could simply say, hey, Ukraine's not going to become a member of NATO anytime soon, and that alone would be a major de-escalation. And the reality is, even if America and Britain said, hey, even though there's an active conflict within Ukraine's borders, and this makes no sense, let's make Ukraine a NATO member right now. That would never, ever go through. A bunch of European countries would veto it. It's not going to go through. But unfortunately, it looks like this whole situation is going to drag on and on, who knows how long. But I don't think Russia is going to invade Kiev and occupy the whole country of Ukraine. It just doesn't make sense. First of all, Ukraine is highly dependent on Russia just to keep their lights on. So they get all their natural gas and all their oil from Russia. In Russia, it would be so much easier for Russia to just say, we're going to turn your lights off in the middle of winter. So I don't see a major invasion. Hopefully it doesn't happen. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think about this situation, and click the subscribe button. New video every, I don't know, but I do plan on making some more pretty soon.